Summer's here, and Nordstrom has everything you need for your best dress season ever. From beach days and weddings to weekend getaways and your everyday wardrobe. Discover stylish options under $100 from tons of your favorite brands like Mango, Skims, Princess Polly, and Madewell. It's easy too with free shipping and free returns, in-store order pickup, and more. Shop today in stores, online at Nordstrom.com, or download the Nordstrom app.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit Venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
Unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome in. Happy Friday evening. Lots of worrying stuff in the news today. I hope this show can serve as a fun, wacky, weird, intimate distraction to all the dysfunction you see when you catch up on live news. I'm glad there are shows out there keeping you up to date with all the horrible things going on in the world, but this show is not one of those shows. It's more science-y, nerdier. It's weirder with a side of I don't know what. Ever enter a sentence and not know how you're going to end it? That's what just happened to me. Let me tell you about tonight's program. I don't know if you can tell from my voice, but I am not tall. Maybe you're short like me. We'll cover a new study that shows people's dissatisfaction with their own height, how much they don't like how tall they are, predicts their jealousy and competitiveness. Why my producer Dani chose this story for me, I may never know. But it feels like a personal attack. And that's why I'm excited to dive into it in about 10 minutes' time. Then, why does it seem when you hit a certain age, deep male friendships are hard to have? It's one of my closest friends' birthday today, and I called him. But I only talk to my close buddies every month or so? And this is true for many, many older men. Why? Why do we shy away from hugs? Where's that safe emotional nakedness amongst men gone? Not that kind of nakedness. Anyway, it's a topic I recently read an interesting article on, so we'll discuss that halfway through the hour. Man, have we got a great lineup for you tonight. We've got fungus content. We've got ant content. I mean the insect, not your mother's sister. It's going to be an action-packed show. Let's jump into it.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
And in this week's lesson on how far people will go to avoid paying for a middle seat on an airplane news, a 35-year-old man has been officially convicted for doing what most of us have only fantasized about during a layover, flying for free, over and over again, by pretending to be a flight attendant. And he did it not once, not twice, but on more than 120 flights, which is incredible because I can't even lie about my height on my driver's license without breaking a little sweat. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, between 2018 and 2024, the man pulled off this years-long scam by logging into an airline's internal website that allows actual pilots and actual flight attendants to book free travel. The form then asks you for your airline, your hire date, and your badge number. And he didn't just fudge this info, he fabricated 30 different badge numbers and claimed to work for 7 different airlines, and put in enough fake hire dates to make a time traveler blush. And if that weren't enough aviation cosplay, prosecutors say he also posed as a flight attendant on 3 other airline carriers too. I mean, he was a fake employee of more airlines than most real flight attendants even fly for in a career. The man didn't moonlight, he full-on constellationed, or at least pretended to. On one of these carriers, he was convicted of stealing 34 flights using fake credentials. So what we're learning here is the airline industry is so understaffed and overworked, A guy who doesn't even work there at all can just blend in fine. If he brought a wheelie bag and sighed loudly while walking down the jet bridge, I'm not sure anyone questioned it. Now here's the kicker. The TSA is trying very hard to assure everyone this wasn't exactly a security risk. In their words, he underwent all applicable TSA security procedures and did not pose a threat to other passengers. Translation, we frisked him. We knew he wouldn't cause any harm, but we didn't check for ambition or bad vibes. To be clear, this man never worked as a flight attendant, not even once. His indictment, though, said he supposedly worked for an airline based in Dallas since 2015. Hence his ability to log into the system to put in the fraudulent data. That's not just open for anyone, in case you're wondering. But he never worked as a pilot, never worked as an airline attendant, or a flight deck engineer. Do they even have those anymore? He now faces up to 20 years in prison for wire fraud, 10 more for entering secure areas under false pretenses, plus fines up to $250,000. All for flying, for free, and lying, and committing fraud, I guess. His sentencing is set for August, which means, for now, he's just officially grounded by a judge, probably without peanuts. Look, do I admire the hustle? Yes. Do I recommend it? Only if your dream is to spend your frequent flyer miles in prison. Though, knowing this guy, he'll probably find a way to board that prison transport, pretending to be the driver. And in G, I could have told you that about your sleeping habits, Snooze. It's official. Hitting the snooze button every morning is apparently not a medically approved lifestyle choice. There are downsides, according to science. Gee, I could have told you that. I mean, look, I love the snooze button. It's got a special place in my heart as the only relationship in my life that's both committed and deeply toxic. But according to a sleep doctor, yes, that's a real title a doctor can hold and not the name of a Pixar villain. This habit is messing with our brains. That's according to a recent study. Repeated snoozing fragments your sleep, which is ironic because I always thought the fragmented part of my morning was that stumble that involves tripping to my coffee machine, like a zombie. Anyway, when you hit snooze repeatedly and your body snoozes repeatedly, you flail between light sleep and mild panic, which is a lot like dating in your 30s. But instead of deep restorative rest during this time, you get that repeated 9 minutes of groggy purgatory. And a bonus existential crisis when your third alarm goes off with that cheery marimba noise. You know the one. And here's where things get worse. That extra sleep that you think you're getting by pressing the snooze button, it's about as useful as decaf coffee. In fact, it might even be a sign that you've got an undiagnosed sleep disorder or, a job you hate or a life full of anxiety or whatever. But sure, let's blame the snooze button. Because science. In the US, over 50 million people report having sleep issues, which is coincidentally the population in France, my favorite unit of measure. That guy over there, he's a millionaire. How much money does he have? The population of France dollars. Actually, I think the population of France might be slightly more than that. We're off topic. But this whole show is a tangent. But let's get off the tangent. Now, 1 in 3 of us isn't getting enough shut-eye, which might explain why the guy ahead of you at Starbucks is crying over his cake pop. And the sleep doctor whose expertise I'm relaying for this story, perhaps exaggeratedly, who probably owns multiple matching pajama sets, says to fix this, you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Revolutionary advice, I know. Gee, I could have told you that. Next, is he going to tell me that water is good for hydration and I shouldn't yell at my houseplants? But they do grow better if I do, right? His advice includes turning off your screens before bed, which is adorable because nothing helps everyone unwind like wondering if the world's going to end via the doom scroll. He also suggests putting your alarm across the room so you have to get up out of bed to turn it off, which I do agree with. It's something I've done with my phone, except now I have a regular alarm clock, a second one closer to my bed, and they just kind of taunt each other in the morning, but not important. And if you're really fancy or just profoundly desperate, you can get a sunrise alarm clock that gently lights up the room like you're waking up in a Scandinavian commercial for oat milk. Or for free, I suppose you could wait for your neighbor's emotional support rooster to scream in your window, but that doesn't work for everyone. The point is, the snooze button isn't helping. It's like pressing pause on your problems. Like putting off doing something important by playing Netflix. Except this pause button has less nudity and worse lighting. But here's the moral of the story. Let's all try to sleep a little better. Or at least pretend while we're scrolling on TikTok until our phone falls on our face. And speaking of that phone, here's some advice from me, not the sleep doctor. Plug the phone in away from the bed. good night or good luck. Do you like what you hear, but you're not going to be with us the whole night, or you want to catch what you missed on the last show yesterday? Good news, this program is available as a podcast, free to catch up on. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza, that's lastshow.pizza, not .com, and there you can find out details about how to subscribe for the show. And please do, though I can't tell you what to do because I'm not your mother. Coming up next, a new study that says short people who are uncomfortable with their own height are more likely to be jealous and competitive. And I'm upset with my producer for assigning me this story because it feels like a personal attack. And yes, I'm only 5'7". Okay, 5'6". Okay, 5'5.5". Details on this study after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
My day kicks off with a refreshing Celsius energy drink, then straight to the gym. Pre-K pickup, back home to meal prep. Time for my fire station shift. One more Celsius, gotta keep the lights on. When the 3-alarm hits, I'm ready. Celsius. Live, fit, go. Grab a cold, refreshing Celsius at your local retailer or locate now at Celsius.com.
Prepare to have your mind blown as we delve into the complexities of relationships, explore the cutting edge of science, and celebrate the bizarre and beautiful absurdity of the world around us. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
I am a little upset with my producer for assigning me this story today. It feels like a personal attack, but here we are. A new study finds that people who are unhappy with their height are more likely to feel jealous and competitive, especially towards same-sex peers. So, I guess size really does matter, at least psychologically speaking. I'm joined by Professor Peter Karl Jonason. He's a psychology researcher at Wyzia University in Poland. Peter, welcome in.
Thanks for having me.
Intrasexual competition.
Yep.
What does that mean? And yeah, let's start there. Let's define this term.
It's a fancy way of saying how, say, men compete with men and women compete with women. And it has its origins in, let's call it like evolutionary biology. Like the phrasing is much more of the kind that you would get out of a biologically oriented researcher. And so, for example, how women might compete over something silly like how big their purses are, or men might compete with one another about how big their television sets are. These are manifestations potentially of intrasexual competition.
Interesting. And they could be towards mate selection, but the mates that they may be selecting may not care. For example, a woman does not care how big my television set is.
Exactly. In that particular case, I don't think women care. They might even be a little bit annoyed. But when it comes to something like height, we see even Tinder now has a filtering system available to say, you know, I only want men at this height or above, for example. So in the dating game, height is a pretty big deal, but it's also a big deal in the intrasexual game as well. Like a taller man is just more imposing and intimidating to a shorter man. I'm short, maybe you're short too.
Yes.
I can appreciate this. Like if I have to correct my neck up like that, right? It's very obvious, you know, I'm looking up your nostrils.
I don't like tall people. No, I'm kidding. They're fine, I guess.
Don't go to Denmark.
I have been. We get it. After 6 feet, it's just rude. I mean, why does anyone need to be taller than 6 feet? Not important.
Excessive. It's why do you need $1 billion? It's just, you know.
You know, every billionaire should be capped at $1 billion. Every 6, anyway.
That's the line.
Now, as a young person, I hated my height. As an adult, I kind of think my shortness is fun because it makes me loud.
Mm-hmm.
Voice loud. But it's not just how mates are seeing height. It's how someone feels about their own height that makes them engage in these kind of like negative, maladaptive, dysfunctional behaviors. That's what you found.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure if I would say intrasexual envy or intrasexual jealousy are actually maladaptive. They might be undesirable, but they're essentially saying, look, I'm envious of what you have. I'm jealous of what you have. And I feel competitive in a greater degree. In one of our other studies, we showed that shorter people are higher on like things like narcissism and psychopathy, as an example. But here, we're focused on this study, we focused more on the psychological aspects more than the physical aspects. So instead of how tall you actually are, how dissatisfied are you with your height? And it turns out that in men particularly, men who are less satisfied with their height are more intrasexually competitive, more intrasexually jealous, and more intrasexually envious.
Was there a specific moment, cultural observation thing, like those dating app bios where people put 6 foot over only, short guys not invited, that inspired you to look into this? Or was it your own height?
I mean, admittedly, I would love to say it was something inspired by something grand, but as we detail in this study, we kind of had some extra data sitting around, and we've done some other work trying to understand the dynamics of height, not just in the intersexual, the male-female domain, but the male-male and the female-female domain as well. And so, no, I mean, as I said, I'm short, so I'm keenly aware of this feeling, and I often find myself having to have conversations with people who are taller than me, they have no appreciation, right? They can't actually relate, because to them, they've always been up there and not down here. And so they, oh no, that doesn't matter. It's not important. Yes, it does. Like I'm 173, so 5'8". I'm aware of my height all the time. And I'm, of course, no surprise, dissatisfied with my height, as a lot of people are, who are under that magic threshold, right? That magic line that women seem to be choosing men over. It doesn't seem to work the same in women, right? So there's not really a sense in women of, I wish I was, it's like the song from Skee-Lo from many, many years ago. I wish I was a little bit taller, right? Women don't usually feel this way. Women are more likely to feel, I wish I was a little bit shorter.
Sure.
For example. But it's men who feel like, I wish I was a little bit taller. I mean, the song, if you remember it, is about a guy who's short, like, hey, why can't women like me? Why can't I be a baller even though I'm shorter than everybody else? So there's short people are keenly aware, men in particular, of their diminished capacity to compete on the intersexual platform arena, and as well as a result in the intersexual, right? So females select males who win male-male competition. This is present in lions. This is present in any other mammal species you can come up with. So why would it not be the same in people, of course?
I completely agree. Now, for women, it doesn't matter as much, but it matters a little bit. And we're not talking about being tall, but we're talking about height dissatisfaction here.
Well, we didn't find really much effects in terms of intrasexual competition, competitiveness, envy, or competitiveness. But it might be that women who are smaller might feel a greater degree of fear in the world, right? And so the smaller stature might actually, for men or women, might increase, your attendance to threats in the environment, for example, and that there's an adaptive change in your psychological system that responds to, hey, look, I'm shorter than other people. I'm going to see people as more threatening. Indeed, this is often how dogs feel. So smaller dogs, especially, but dogs in general, the world for them is looking up. And so people seem much taller and scarier than they are. And so if you know people are good with dogs, they know to get down to the dog's level when they meet a new dog, because it's less imposing, it's less threatening, even in our furry friends.
I have come to accept my height. I think what happened was, it was 10 years ago, but I'm 5'7", lie, 5'6". I dated someone who was 6 feet tall.
Okay.
It was like, we weren't that compatible, like on other levels, but I felt very I don't know, there was this weird intrasexual thing going on as I went out with her, that it was like this flex.
Yes, 100%.
I didn't really expect that to happen, but when it did, I gotta say, I kind of liked it. I feel bad that I'm wearing somebody as a flex and not for who they are, although I did like her for who she was. But what are the ways in which people who are comfortable in their height, even if they don't have that tallness, are there positive things that can happen when one accepts one's height, I guess is my question.
Well, it's quite interesting. So we asked two different kind of attitudinal questions here, one of which was, I wish I was taller, and the other was, I'm satisfied with my height. But in the case of the second, we find no correlations between intrasexual anything. It's only in the I wish I was taller. So people's feeling of, I'm satisfied. Look, I'm 5'8". Okay, I'm satisfied, but I also wish I was taller, but I'm not hating myself for being short. So therefore I'm satisfied. But hey, look, if I could spend $1 million and get, an extra 5 inches on my above my head, great. I would take that any day.
I don't know if I would. I think it would change who I was. Like when people ask me, do I regret my divorce? I'm like, I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for those life circumstances. Yes, I regret it, but I would do it all again. I feel like that's how I am about my height. I wish I was taller, but I'm not sure I would take the extra inches.
Yeah, I think you're probably right in that your whole life is influenced by these kinds of parameters, and it would be a life-changing event to get an extra 5 inches of your height. You'd be a different person immediately.
Professor Peter Karl Jonason is a psychology researcher at Wyzia University in Poland. Peter, I have loved this chat. Thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Up next, what happens when the bromance fades? Well, one man's search for deep male friendships that he lost is what we'll cover. Have you noticed as you age, friendships fade? Well, this man wrote about it, did something about it, and lived to tell the tale. tell the tale. That up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want is a great feeling. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can choose to bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
The last show with David Cooper. Procrastinate your life away with us.
Why is it so hard for men to stay close friends with other dudes? Our guest today wrote a moving, funny, painfully relatable piece about losing touch with the guys he once loved like brothers and what it took to start reaching out and connecting again. His name is Sam Graham-Felsen. He is a novelist, a journalist. Check out his book, Green, a novel. It's available wherever books are sold. Sam, welcome in.
Thanks for having me.
Do you remember the last time you had a really good male hug that lasted, let's say, more than a millisecond?
Maybe with my dad when I was like 5. That's part of my point is that it rarely happens. When I'm a pretty liberal guy. I grew up on the Northeast in Massachusetts. Have tons of gay friends. Consider myself pretty enlightened, but I get uncomfortable if a male friend holds on for too long because I'm like I don't know, like should I hug back? Should I hold him back? So anyway, it's one of these things where it's so deeply ingrained that men are supposed to be physically distant from one another, emotionally distant from one another, kind of stay in our own spheres. And, there's that old cliche that definitely rings true in my case that when men hang out, we don't even look each other in the eye. We stand next to each other and look at a screen usually, so we can avoid looking at each other in the eye.
I hear you. The other day, my girlfriend was shocked to find out that my 2 closest friends, like I was in their wedding party, like they are the number 1, number 2 favorites on my telephone. I talk to maybe once every 6 weeks, and it's a 15-minute phone call. And all our closeness and jokes, the love is there, but it's weird because, like, is that a close friend? Is someone you talk to every month and a half a close friend?
And every month and a half is pretty good, frankly. Like last night I saw somebody who I would consider probably one of my 2 best friends. It was the first time I saw him in maybe 5 months. He doesn't even live that far away from me. He's a train ride away from me. And that's just like weirdly normal for me. And I never even talked to this guy on the phone. And, when I see him in person, and it's funny because, of course he read my article and he said, well, I hope that what you wrote about doesn't apply to me. And I was like, nah, dude, of course not. Like, I feel open about, talking about anything with you. I feel like we can discuss our emotions. We don't have to like keep it surface level. But I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing you in 5 months. That was like another part of my article is like, if we feel comfortable with each other, why do we not even see each other, basically ever? And he couldn't really answer that one. But I think it's for the same reasons that I wrote about in my article. Sure, like, look, I'm middle-aged now. Sad to say that out loud. I'm 44.
I'm turning 39 next week. I'm turning 40 in a year. Don't say the word middle-aged to me. It scares me.
Well, you know what? Supposedly we're all going to live to 120 now.
Right.
If we, listen to Joe Rogan and eat the supplements he tells us to eat.
Please don't.
But anyway, basically, I'm 44. I have 2 kids. I'm married. I'm busy with work stuff, and so is he. He's super busy with So we've got all those excuses that are real, but like I think the real reason we don't hang out very much is because men do not prioritize friendship. Like there's this kind of idea that like, once you move in with your girlfriend, you kind of like check the box of where you're supposed to be in life, and hanging out with the lads at the bar, it just is like what you're supposed to do when you're younger, like men don't quote unquote need friends, because we can deal with life without them, like they've served their purpose and we've moved on. And again, I'm saying all of this, I know this is a radio show, basically in air quotes, because I don't actually believe this, but these are such deeply ingrained ideas that we absorb from movies, from TV shows, of course, from social media memes. And it's just like hard to not get sucked into these notions.
It's sort of cruel to put that responsibility of like your best and only friend where you can have a safe emotional space, be raw, put that all on your partner. Like if you're straight, your girlfriend, it's kind of unfair to them.
Well, it sucks for them. And, look, as you said in your introduction, I'm a novelist, and being a novelist sucks. It's very hard.
I one-up you and I give you radio host, but please keep going.
Both are very hard. So I complain a lot about my writer's block, about, getting rejected when I submitted something for a fellowship or submitting an article, because, writers get rejected constantly, right? And my wife, basically for years was my only sounding board. And of course, she's a very empathic person. She's a great listener, but everyone gets sick of like a whiner, and but whining is necessary. You need to complain about your life. You need to like vent, right? But if the only person you're venting to is your partner
and therapist,
and I'm no longer in therapy, so I only had my partner to do it.
Oh, there's Exhibit A for why being a radio host is worse than being a novelist. I'm still in therapy, but please keep going.
Okay. No, anyway, the point is that she was overburdened, and of course, she was telling me about her problems too, but she also has lots of women that she can talk to about her problems. And I didn't, have that as much as she had. And by the way, in the academic literature on divorce, one of the most highly cited reasons that women give for dumping their man is that they feel emotionally overburdened because the guys have no friends and they just like lay all of their emotional garbage on their wives, and their wives just can't take it anymore. Then basically the men are too needy. And it's ironic because the reason why men, have so much trouble talking to their friends is because we're afraid of seeming needy. So then we end up just doing it to our partners, and that annoys them. So it's this like horrible catch-22. And I guess that's kind of the reason why I wrote this article. I hope that like, guys can figure out how to get out of it, because it stinks not just for us, but for women too.
Do you think your own process of working through it involved writing about it? And could that have been some cry to your friends to say, hey, I want to be close to you again?
Yes. First of all, like, one of my favorite quotes about writing comes from Joan Didion, the great nonfiction writer who is also a novelist, who said, like, I write to figure out what I think, right? So, like, I knew I had a problem. Like, I knew that, like, way too many nights I was just sitting around watching Netflix or watching old, Curb Your Enthusiasm episodes. And while I enjoy doing that, like it's not the healthiest thing to like never go out. And the weirdest thing is that I'm a guy with a lot of friends. Like I am a hypersocial dude. I am not like some incel who, sat alone in my basement growing up. Like I had a million friends like throughout my 20s. Like, I like talking to people. I like being open. I like sharing my feelings. And yet even me, I'm like staying in all the time. And I'm like, what's going on here? So So the article, I think, was more of an attempt to diagnose like what is wrong with me rather than a cry for help for my friends. Because frankly, like, a lot of my friends struggle with the same issue, but I think I struggled with it in maybe even a little bit more than other people. And like, I would get asks to go hang out and I would just make excuses. Nah, man, sorry, the kids, couldn't find a babysitter, blah, blah, blah. And it annoyed my friends. Now I will say, writing the article, now that I've come out publicly, with all this embarrassing stuff about how I struggle so much with friendship, like I've gotten flooded with requests to hang out, not just from my friends, but like from new guys who want to hang out. And I'm just saying yes to everything, in part because I don't want to seem like a hypocrite.
Well, it looks like I might have just made a new friend, side note.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm coming to hang out. But the truth is, like, I really like the last few weeks, it's funny, my wife is like starting to get annoyed at me because she's like, dude, stop going out all the time. You need to stay at home more. But I'm just enjoying this ride because I am, getting back out there and it just feels good. Like I say this in the piece, but like I've been in therapy. I've tried a million different things. I've tried meditation. Nothing feels better. Nothing makes me happier than hanging out with my friends.
Well, nothing has made me happier than this stream of consciousness journey on male friendships. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Check out the piece. It's called Where Have All My Deep Male Friendships Gone in the New York Times. Check out Sam Graham-Felsen's book, Green, a Novel, available wherever books are sold. Sam, what a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. This was fun.
After the break, if you think humans invented war, betrayal, and military conquest, think again. Ants, the insect. They've been doing it for millions of years. They raid nests, they enslave rivals, they leave behind a trail of carnage. Up next, we'll cover all the horror, but also the humanity through the eyes of the murderous little ant. This is The Last Show. I'm David Cooper.
Comcast is committed to bringing access to the internet to all Americans, including rural communities across the country, like Sussex County, Delaware.
We were being left behind. Everybody around us seemed to have internet, but we did not. High-speed internet is one of those good things that we needed to help us move our farming, our small businesses, our recreation forward.
Learn more about how we're bringing our next generation network to more people across the country at comcastcorporation.com/investment in America.
Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Right now, it's all things avuncular. We are talking we are talking ants, all things ants, not your mother's sister, but the tiny creature that rules the world. They farm, they fight wars, they carry 10 times their weight, and they somehow might still find time to nap. It's a deep dive into the weird world of ants here with Curator of Entomology at the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. His name is Dr. Brian Fisher. Brian, my goodness, am I excited to talk to you today.
It's great to be here. I look forward to sharing this secret lives of ants with you.
I heard a stat once, I never looked it up, and I quote it to people, and you'll tell me if it's true or not, that if aliens surveyed the Earth, they would think ants were the ones in charge, because if you're going by biomass, they're like the heaviest thing that exists in terms of life on the Earth that isn't like plants or whatever.
That's true. In fact, if you put all those ants in a big pile and put them on one side of the scale, they'd weigh more than humans. So yes, in terms of biomass alone, but to be honest, that's not the most interesting thing about ants is that you put them all together, they weigh a lot. But if you put them all together, they have an evolutionary masterpiece. And that's what I would love to talk to you about, because most people don't even see the ants, right? They may see them occasionally if they show up on their kitchen counter or their toilet seat. But to be honest, most people's reaction is to abhor and try to kill them. But I want to say, look, you have this incredible biology happening right in front of you, and there should be observed and watched. And if you just listen for a little bit about some of their biology, it might intrigue you to actually next time to give them cookie crumbs maybe, and then watch them perform their amazing feats.
If we choose a queen, it's because they're just born into a family. If we choose a worker, it's because he or she spent their life training that trade and figured out how to do that work. They have evolved to have specific roles, and depending on, I guess you're going to tell me what circumstances, a different type of ant that's the same species is born, and they have different characteristics. I've always found that so fascinating, that genetically they're different, that's somehow in the DNA, but you've got these different types of individuals that exist. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so let's do some ant 101 biology to
Please.
really understand why they're special. We have to get some facts right. Why? So one, when you look at an ant colony, you see all these workers, we'll call them, running around. They're all sisters. They're females. And they basically share the same genetics as the individual or groups that are acting like the queen that's laying the eggs. So they actually have the same genetics. Now, they actually have brothers too, the brothers, but actually they live about 3 days, they mate, they die. So the males are a really short-lived part of the story. But what's interesting about the ants is that these individuals act like a single creature, a creature with thousands of legs, thousands of eyes, and thousands of stomachs. That they divide this labor, which we are aware of, right? We see them on our kitchen counter carrying off the pizza back to the nest, right?
Running a supply line, which is fascinating in and of itself, the way that they like have a supply chain. You know, they figured out supply chaining well before we did.
Right. In fact, we have actually a lot to learn. In fact, if I ever had the chance to talk to a CEO of a company, I would say, look, ants have evolved these social structures for over 100 million years. And we actually have a lot to learn about how to run a corporation or run a society if we would just watch them. In fact, if you look at leadership succession, like the movie, right? Ants have a much better strategy than corporations do. And often with this changing climate right now, with tariffs and everything, we see all these businesses failing. And maybe it's because of the business model focused on linear production and stuff that maybe we could actually adopt more open controls, not such centralized control, and distribution of cooperation like ants do, and have more robust economies too.
The ants would never have one container ship in the Suez Canal. Remember the Evergreen or Evergiven and screw up everything globally for 6 months. But okay, let's get back on track. You were saying the types of individuals doing the work that you see in the kitchen, running the supply line. Let's go back to that thread of the conversation.
Yes, and so let's just give an example. Now imagine you're in an ant colony. You're a female worker along with all your sisters, and your role is to be a forger. So off you go foraging, and it's a hot summer day. You're really hungry. You haven't seen food all day. And finally, you found a juicy caterpillar. What are you going to do? Are you going to take that juicy caterpillar back to the nest, share it with your sisters? Or are you actually going to maybe eat half of it or eat the whole thing? What would you do?
I mean, I'm selfish. I would alert, if I'm an ant, my understanding is I would alert my fellow ants using something called pheromones. I might go back to the colony and leave a trail of pheromones. It's these scents that I can use to retrace my steps. I'm getting this wrong. I'm watching it in your face in real time. You're like, this guy's an ant idiot. But I would somehow use a scent trail to remember where the caterpillar was, tell my sisters, they'd all come and we'd share it and bring it back to the nest.
Well, great. You've understood what ants do, but let's try to understand why they do it. Like, we focus on ants and go, wow, what a beautiful division of labor. But there's something behind that that's really interesting. And it helps explain a lot of the behaviors and the kind of collective intelligence of what we're seeing here. So ants, an adult ant, cannot eat solid food. So it has to take that food back to the stomach. And the stomach of an ant colony is the larva. So that's the little white grub, like the caterpillar of a moth. It's the white grub that can chew and eat food. And that forces this collective working together, because the adults cannot eat. They bring the food back to the larva. The larva then start digesting it. And initially, we thought this was just acting like a process of division of labor. But I'm going to explain now that it's much more than that. So the larva chew the solid food, digest it, and then regurgitate it. We call that trophallaxis, where then the workers can drink up. They can drink, but not eat. They drink it up, and then they can share it with other workers and the queen in the colony. In fact, some workers can extend their social stomach to be a big balloon and act like a refrigerator so that there's food in the colony during those lean times, like the dry season or the winter. So there's storage there. And that means that they have like a supermarket available all the time that other ants can come to, tickle, and then that storage refrigerator regurgitates it. So it's like having shopping centers and a food transfer. But we've just learned it's much more than that. So we've talked about the evolution of individuality as a major milestone in the evolution of life. In fact, in humans, we have a metabolic division of labor between different organs and cells across our body. And that's really important for a functioning organ. We have a blood flow that transfers proteins, enzymes, and so forth around our bodies. Now imagine an ant society where you have one creature, the colony, but the individuals are separate. How do they do metabolic division of labor? Well, as it turns out, when you bring a caterpillar back and feed it to the larva, that larva doesn't just digest that, it actually digests it and produces certain hormones, proteins, enzymes, and gives it as a liquid form to the queen or to the workers. In fact, for some ants, there's a special fluid, and whoever drinks that fluid becomes the egg layer, and thus the queen. In fact, that determines caste, in a sense, which individual becomes the queen just by drinking a social fluid with a special protein from the larva.
I'm here with Dr. Brian Fisher, a curator of entomology at the California Academy of Sciences. We're talking about how ants mirror a cooperation model that really shows the best of humanity. We could only hope to be like this. They also have a warfare model that might mirror the worst of humanity. And when we come back from the break, I want to discuss that.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Air Force Research Laboratory is partnering with Google Cloud using AI to accelerate defense research for air, space, and cyberspace forces. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Your above average intelligence brought you here. It deserves above average absurdity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
We are here with the curator of entomology at the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, Dr. Brian Fisher, discussing the single biggest threat to ants. It's not uncles, it's other ants. And I'm talking about the tiny creature, not your mom's sister. Brian, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you being here.
Oh, great. It is great to be here. And I love talking about ants. In fact, one of the surprising things about ants is that the individual is not the single worker. It's the colony.
Sure.
And as a colony, they have to defend their territory. They have to protect their queen. And only the elder ants, those that have already served some time taking care of the babies, the nurses, the queen, actually go outside the nest. Now, those elders are also the ones that protect the colony. They're out there foraging, a high-risk job, looking for food. They could get lost, they could get eaten, they could just die, but also defending the nest. And most people don't realize the number one enemy of an ant colony is another colony of the same species. They've adapted to eat the same thing, they've adapted to live in the same microhabitat, and they fight like crazy. In fact, there are these choke points in an evolving colony to get to a certain size, kind of in stealth mode, so that then they can kind of burst out and kill the other colonies or repress the other colonies of the same species around them.
Why? Why can't they all just get along? Is it just there's not enough territory, or they want resources from the other ants? Like, what would be some of the reasons? And we'll get to these ant species that are parasites that seek to take over a colony and basically become them or use their queen or replace their queen with their own. That's a whole other thing. I just want to get to one species versus another in simple warfare to start here. What are some of the reasons for it?
Well, one has to do with the way a society works and an individual works. Now, we're going to say the colony functions as a superorganism as an individual. And therefore, it has to also recognize self. All organisms have to figure out what the individual is versus the other. And for ants, they use smell. The smell is technically a hydrocarbon that's on the surface of the ant that absorbs a local smell. And that's how, when an ant goes in the colony, if it has the colony smell, it's accepted. And everything else is not accepted. And therefore, every time a sister colony or a nearby colony goes in the nest, they will attack because it's not self. And that, therefore, they just evolved that mechanism to try to kill everything that's not self that way.
So it's sort of like it's an immune response if you start to think of the ant colony as an organism.
Yes, it's an immune response. And there's an incredible diverse array. We discovered in Madagascar, where I work, a hero ant. That actually, this colony actually has like a big vase that comes out of the clay bank. And there's just nothing there to protect the ants once another ant would crawl into that entrance. However, what the ants do is, as soon as that curvature is breached, another ant runs out, grabs it, and jumps off the cliff with the ant. And that's why we call them the hero ants.
That's altruism right there. I mean, that's a commitment to a cause that is a little alarming. These ants kind of mirror us in horrible ways.
Very horrible ways. So fighting this way, though, through 100 million years, you can imagine there are ways that others have evolved to break the system. You mentioned parasite ants or other, not just ants, other beetles and so forth that have learned how to break the system by adapting quickly to take on the smells of a local ant colony. They can sneak in and then have a feast of all the larvae, all these cute white chunks of meat that they can consume, or even another ant can go in and kill the queen. And then, funny thing is, all the workers, all the larvae don't know there's been a bait and switch, and they start serving this new, unrelated species queen that just took over the colony.
My understanding is there's some species of ants that's the only way that they can propagate. The only way that they can have a colony is by parasitically replacing a queen. They can't do it on their own.
Yes, there's a local ant that in California, in the Southwest, that does it. It's quite amazing. The genus is Polyergus, and it doesn't even have workers. It just has soldier caste that will actually go out and steal other nests, other cocoons and larvae from other nests, but also the queen that sneaks in, slowly taking on the smells, and then when the moment is ripe, kills the queen and takes over the nest. It's kind of gruesome.
It certainly is. Now, if I want to watch all this happen, well, maybe not all of this, but some of this happen at home, I might want to start my own ant colony. I think it's kind of cruel to keep ants in a glass jar in your house or whatever, but they are fascinating to look at. Any advice if I want to start my own? Is this something you recommend people do?
Well, there are ants mostly in anybody's backyard or even in towns, and those ants are beautiful to have inside your house to watch. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Collecting an ant in your local park or city. There's one called the pavement ant, which is a great ant to collect that can be reared, and it's nice. Now, there is this fashion right now of collecting exotic ants and shipping them around the world. And that's given us professional, scientifically based ant researchers more difficulty in actually getting permits now, because we have to be fighting against a perception that almost all ant collecting now is geared toward a market and a business. And recent court cases in Kenya regarding some young teenagers in the ant keeper trade is made it, where I work, much more difficult to argue that there is a science, a profession that studies ants, and that research is beneficial with no intent to make money. It's actually to understand and share knowledge. So if you do have an ant colony at home, please make sure that you're taking a local ant and not being part of a growing complex trade of illegal trade in a sense.
And that's at best. At worst, you're harboring introduced species that could cause damage to your local environment, but that's a conversation for another time. Okay, so I go in my backyard, I find an ant, I put it in a little sand thing with glass. Like, how do I go about this?
Ants are sometimes the introduced ants that are found in our cities are very, very persistent in living. So they're actually quite easy to take care of. And it doesn't take much. You could just even have just a petri dish with a lid on it and another feeding area or a test tube for water. They just need access to food, could be a grape or any other eggs even. Fruit is great. And also they need humidity. So they need access to some liquid. That's why I like to give fruit, because the fruit provides sugar and also in a controlled way, access to water. And that fruit, like a grape cut in half, doesn't rot right away. So you have to be careful not to give them a moldy environment.
Are there any bizarre, unexpected things about ants that you know about or have observed that most people have never heard of?
Well, most people don't realize that ants evolved farming, right? So we think humans did everything first, right? So 67 million years ago, ants became farmers. They started farming fungus. And over time, that relationship became very unique, where the fungus is not found anywhere else, but is only grown with that species of leafcutter ant, for example. And those colonies become colossal. They're larger than an elephant. In fact, if we could actually see them above ground, everybody would study them like they study elephants, because they're massive and they have an incredible impact on the environment. And often most people don't realize this. Ants are part of what I call the brown cycle. There's the green cycle, which we're all excited by, the big trees, the big leafy vegetation, but behind it all, and equally important, is the brown cycle of things getting turned over back to nutrients. And ants, in a sense, rule that brown cycle.
Well, Dr. Brian Fisher is a curator of entomology at the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. Brian, what a great chat this was. I appreciate you so much being on the show.
Thank you. I loved it.
After the break, we'll go from ants to fungus because, well, why not? Material scientists are using mushrooms to potentially develop the materials of the future. Think airplanes, spaceships, all from mushrooms. So if you're a fun guy, stick around. Oh my God.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Hey there, travelers. Kaylee Cuoco here. Sorry to interrupt your music, great artist BT Dubs, but wouldn't you rather be there to hear it live? With Priceline, you can get out of your dreams and into your dream concert. They've got millions of travel deals to get you to that festival, gig, rave, sound bath, or sonic experience you've been dreaming of. Download the Priceline app today, and you can save up to 60% off hotels and up to 50% off flights. So don't just dream about that trip. Book it with Priceline.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
They are quietly running the forest floors like engineers, and now with new research, mushrooms, fungus might revolutionize material science. That's right, fungus is no longer just for soup. It could be the blueprint for the future. I, for one, bow down to our fungal overlords, as they might hold the key to smarter, stronger, better materials. I'm here with a mechanical engineering researcher at the University of California, Merced, who works and deals in fungus. One might say you peddle in fungus. Her name is Dr. Debora Lyn Porter. Debora Lyn, thank you for joining me today.
Of course, happy to be here.
That's a line from Seinfeld. You peddle in fungus when one of the characters is dating a podiatrist. I don't know why I'm derailing. Let's start simple. Hyphae, if I said this correctly?
You know what? It depends on who you ask. Everyone has a different preference. I say hyphae, but you can say hyphae, hyphae. Take your poison.
Why do they matter so much in your research and for mechanical engineering?
Okay, so hyphae are actually like the building blocks of most types of fungal structures. They're these microscopic little filaments that you get from fungal cells. where a fungal cell will propagate, it'll add another one, until you have these long, like, I like to think of it like spaghetti. You have these spaghetti noodles of fungal cells, and those filaments are called hyphae.
Got it.
So these make up so many different types. If you see a mushroom, it's made up of these hyphal filaments. So what's really neat about these from a mechanical and material science perspective is that you can pick pretty much any mushroom you see. And if you look at it on the microscopic scale, it's going to be made up of these filaments. And they're really neat because they can differentiate themselves, where all mushrooms have at least one type of hyphae, but depending on what the gene expression is, and as they start making these fruiting bodies, the sporocarps or the mushrooms, they can differentiate into different types of hyphae to give different types of properties. So they can go from just the regular kind to making these structural hyphae that give more strength and more mechanical resistance, to another type that binds together these different hyphal filaments and networks to then again add more strength to these. And it's all from, if you look at like SEM or like microscopic image of these, it looks like a big bowl of spaghetti. It's just these filaments kind of all over the place. But they're able to combine and rearrange in order to make these structures that are very different, have very different mechanical properties. If you think of something like a white button mushroom, which you put in your soup or your stir fry or whatever, compared to there's another Ganoderma or reishi mushrooms are very tough and woody. And they all come down to these hyphal filaments that are able to grow and express in different ways, but it's the same filaments that make up these very different structures.
Are there ways to get them to grow and express where they're super strong to the point where we're like, step aside carbon fiber, step aside reinforced steel? We got hyphae filaments, in the structures of our buildings, in the structures of our spaceships, in our cars.
There is research going into that. So I haven't looked at it much, but I know there's a fantastic researcher out at UC Davis, and she has looked into doing like wind turbines and aerospace structures that incorporate hyphal filaments and mycelia, which is like, hyphal is like filaments, mycelia is like the group of hyphal filaments that are typically like the vegetative structure, like a root system.
Underground, yeah.
But there's people who looking at building bioboards with these because the hyphal structures act as a natural binder. So are there ways to express it? Well, there's been some work that's looked at how using different media for the nutrition can change the strength or the properties or how like dense it is. But yeah, a decent amount of research is going to how can we use fungi and actual natural materials more in these engineering or construction type applications.
Can we talk about how you're using AI or the potential to use AI to like run simulations on fungus to try to understand what configurations will be the best for various materials? Like, walk me through what's happening. It's kind of confusing to me, but it seems fascinating.
Yeah, so I just recently published a paper with some collaborators out at Binghamton out in New York. And what we did is we looked at the natural structure. I did a lot of the experimental work. So I squished them. I recorded, what loads they can handle, did the imaging to see, how big are these filaments? What's the porosity of these structures? Things like that.
So you did that kind of experimental work with mushrooms, not the other kind.
My experimentation, I do a lot of squishing of mushrooms. I do a lot of poking of mushrooms to see, how hard they are, how tough they are. I image them to look at the structures. So I did all that kind of experimental work. Now, my collaborators at Binghamton University, they do a lot of computational work. So they make models. So they're able to take all these structures that I got, and I was able to find a structure that called a Voronoi diagram, which can kind of mimic this network-like structure where you have these filaments or these lines in between. And by arranging those, changing the computational power of it and how they're distributed, we were able to make a system modeled on what we see in the mushrooms. And not only like make it, oh yeah, that looks similar, but to validate it, where we are able to change the material mechanical properties of this structure just by going into the program. You type in a few numbers, and it's a little bit more complicated than that, but able to create these systems or these simulations that, mimic a real world structure with real world like strength and properties. So with getting into machine learning and stuff, we hope to be able to extend this where we can not only simulate and create these structures using, finite element models is what we use, but use those and do lots and lots and lots and lots of simulations. And those can then be fed into a machine learning model. And those can be used to say, okay, we know that if we have this structure here, machine learning model will tell us, okay, this is what we expect the properties to be. But what's really neat and what we're hoping to do is we want to take that backwards too, where we say, okay, these are the properties I want. Like this is how strong I want it to be, how stiff I want it to be. And from this machine learning model, we'll be able to take that backward and say, okay, if you want these set of properties, this is the structure that you're going to need in order to achieve that. So all of that is super neat. And again, my collaborators there are fantastic. I've been working with Jill, his name's Jill, and he's been amazing with this. This is not my area of expertise.
This field of biomimicry, like what do mushrooms have to offer in material science to study that maybe like spiders or trees or dogs don't?
So I will say there's a lot of different ways that we can look at a lot of different things. And let's say everyone might have a way to do a specific thing. One thing that's really neat about mushrooms is there's a lot of open space with those, but they're able to still maintain really good strength and stiffness for the weight that they have, which, okay, real world application, why do we care? Things like aerospace materials. It's important to get good mechanical resistance, good properties to loading, while also still having a really low weight or density of the material. So that's one thing that we've looked to. Or what if we were thinking like something like shock absorbers? Like maybe they need to squish in one direction, but resist squishing in another direction, which is something that we've seen that these structures can do. Another benefit of them, especially as we use actual natural materials, they grow really fast and really easily. You can grow a mushroom a lot faster than you can grow a tree.
So how does it feel getting paid to look at it under microscopes, just generally work with mushrooms? It's a pretty cool job.
Oh, it's a dream come true. This is my dream job, getting to do research on things that can actually make a difference in the world. And mushrooms are just cool in general. This is a dream come true, truly.
Someone told me the other day that a white mushroom, a cremini, and a portobello are all the same mushroom at different stages of his life. And just that simple thing blew my mind. I can't imagine what some of the things you're doing do for blowing your mind. Anyway, thanks so much for talking to me. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been great. Love it.
Dr. Debora Lyn Porter is a mechanical engineering researcher at the University of California, Merced. Up next, we invite foreign correspondent Tony Five to join the show from London, England, and we will cover some very important breaking news. Friday the 13th, the end of the week. It is upon us. So what spooky things and superstitious things lie within? Things are about to get ridiculous in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at fanduel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Most shows deliver serious news that you can use. As a point of differentiation, we give you news you can't use. The Last Show, with David Cooper and special foreign correspondent, Tony Five.
Our announcer was right. You definitely will not be able to use this news, but in spooky, scary, superstitious news, it is Friday the 13th, and our specialist in days of the month, number 13, that happened to fall at the end of the week, is numerologist, amateur numerologist, Tony Five. Welcome to the show.
David, I've got one word for you, my friend.
Please give it to me.
Suspicions.
Ooh, you mean superstitions.
We can go on together with superstition minds. Isn't that it?
I don't, is that a song or?
Suspicious. No, superstitions.
Yes.
Basically, the knocking on wood, the black cat crossing you. Today's the day, my friend. You have to be careful, David. Friday the 13th, my friend.
I know. I fancy myself as this rational, level-headed person, and I'm like, I don't engage in superstitions, but even as you listed those ones, I do sometimes knock on wood, I gotta say.
Oh my God. So you do admit that you have a little suspicious bone in your body?
It's more for other people. Like if I say something awful could happen and someone's around me, I knock on wood so that in case it happens, they think that I covered all the bases. Like when I'm alone, I don't knock on wood.
But you're such a rational, empirical person. And I'm the one that believes in the stuff like I salute magpies. Like finding a lucky penny or a 4-leaf clover, seeing a rainbow, seeing a milk cart in the morning. Like I believe in that. And I kind of inherited it. But where are you on the, I'm sort of 75-22 in favor of believing in superstitions. Where are you?
You truly are an amateur numerologist. I am 0, 100 or 0.000001 and then 99.9999. I'm not going to say 100% that I have proof that superstitions aren't true because I don't. But for me, I just need proof that they are true in order to believe them, if that makes sense. So I'm not saying all your weird superstitions. Also, what is saluting a magpie? We'll get to that in a second. I'm not saying they aren't true in the sense that you need to do these things. I'm just saying I don't believe them because there's not enough evidence to believe them, if that makes sense.
But then you could say that, I don't want to get political, David, but about religion.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, really? Is that your answer?
But I'm not religious. You know that.
Oh, really? I thought you were Jewish.
I mean, yes, I'm culturally Jewish, but I don't believe in, like if I died and there was St. Peter at the pearly gates and the scrolls.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I guess, well, first I'd probably believe I was drugged, but if I was at the pearly gates long enough, I would be like, okay, maybe Christianity is true.
Would you argue with him?
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, of course, St. Peter, nerd.
Would you just say like, you didn't give me enough proof that you existed and now you're here like at the gate trying to let me in or putting me down to hell? Like, would you like seriously argue with St. Peter?
Only if the reason they would send me to hell is because I didn't believe. Because I think that's BS. I think if you're a good person, if heaven is real and hell are real, and you're a fundamentally good person, like you add more good into the world than you add bad, I think regardless of what you believe, if these people are good, and I'm assuming they are, they're not going to send you to hell just for not believing in them.
Okay, have you heard this show? What good are you bringing into the world? I mean,
well,
that's the reason right there.
I'm not, if they give me a PowerPoint presentation, like, here's why you're a bad person, and in that PowerPoint, there is no mention of the fact that I didn't believe in them, fine. But if the main reason they're sending me to hell is because I didn't believe, that's not a very nice thing to do. Like, there's a lot of people out there who don't believe in me, who think I'm going nowhere. I'm not going to send them to hell for that.
Okay, what about the real bad luck thing? You know, like the walking under a ladder, the breaking a mirror, that sort of, the common things.
No.
You wouldn't do that? You don't care if you break a mirror? Okay,
no.
Now, I'll give you one that really threw me. Could you have a photograph of a physical image of somebody that you adore, your mum, your dad, your grandparents, and tear it in half without having any feeling?
Of course. I mean, emotionally, I might be like, oh, this is a rude thing to do because if they find out I tore their photograph.
No, but they're dead. Forget about it. They're dead. Like your grandma, who you just said you love. Could you get a picture? You know you haven't got a picture again, and could you like tear it apart? That's kind of what, when people who I sort of confront with superstitions and juju and stuff, they'll say, well, you can't do that, can you?
Well, it's more of a respect thing, though. I don't think you're actually, you're tarnishing the memory. It's a cruel thing to do to the memory. But in terms of like, oh, there's a spirit out there who's watching and they're going to be like, how dare you rip my photo? No, I don't believe in that.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Like, I would find it very difficult to rip a photo of somebody I cared about, even though I know tangibly and, you know, realistically, yeah, of course, it's just a photo, right? But if I didn't have that photo again, there would be a sense of loss, like, okay, but I just feel like, oh my God, what if they're looking at me? What if the juju's there?
Yeah, no. Like, I wouldn't write a novel about how I wanted to, like, harm my mom, you know? You wouldn't write a novel about how you wanted to, like, torture your mom, because
I know, that wasn't a bestseller. That was on Amazon for a while. Do you remember when you put that out?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because it's mean. It's not because you think that torture is going to happen to her superstitiously, but it's mean. And in that same vein, I think ripping a photograph up of a dead loved one is mean. So I'm not going to do it because I feel bad because I love them, but not because I think there's any superstition or anything.
Oh, see, I'm like 50, 60% like there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I couldn't, there's 50% on one and 60 on the other the superstition plus the feeling bad.
Did you grow up with superstition? Side note, tell me about this magpie.
No, that was my brother. Eva's name was Super. We didn't know him fully, but yeah, I mean, he was all right.
It was a good attempt at a joke. I see where you went with it. I mean, you fell short, but what are you going to do? Were your parents superstitious?
My dad was. My mum, not so much. But she would kind of say it half-heartedly. And then if like when you go through that period where you're just a smart aleck and you say, but Mum, walking under a ladder is basically what you are now. And then she'd say, but you never know. And that was enough for me to go, oh my God, this could happen.
Magpies, what do they mean?
So 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy.
That seems like...
But if you see a single one, David, and you don't want the bad luck, you have to salute the magpie, my friend.
But wait, if I see 4 magpies, does that mean I'm going to start liking boys now? I don't understand.
No, a boy might come into your life, you know?
Oh.
Like, you could have a child. You could, if you're expecting, you could have a child. Or a boy might come into your life for whatever reason. Yeah, it's kind of, you never know, my friend. Why do you disparage it? Umbrage, David. I take umbrage.
Because I have no reason to believe that seeing a magpie is superstitious. I just don't. Why would I believe that?
It's weird that the magpie derivation of bad luck is due to how many numbers there are. So the lonely magpie, the single one on his own, is bad luck. But if they're coupled up, then it's fine. That is funny. That's weird.
Yes, but again, back to the basics. Why is seeing magpies going to have any effect on my life at all?
But it could do. That's the problem. It might do, David. Why are you playing with fate and destiny?
That's such a silly. You could cause anybody to believe any false truth, anything that's wrong, by saying, "Ooh, don't play with the fates. Don't tempt with the fates." That's not an actual argument.
It is, though.
Is it though? It's not.
But I always, like, when I see one, I salute for you. So maybe you don't know that I'm bringing you the good luck because I salute the magpie on your behalf.
What if the real superstition is saluting magpies is bad luck, and so you've secretly been engaging in bad luck activity without knowing your whole life? You're still alive, aren't you, David? Yeah, because I've been not saluting magpies for you.
Then I'm alive. Then your superstition is not to salute magpies. My solution is.
I hate you. Oh man, Tony, thank you for being here. Appreciate your time.
Well, I might be here on Monday. You never know.
You never know. Happy Friday the 13th. Tony 5 is our foreign correspondent in London, England, although corresponding is probably a strong word to use in this case. After the break, the bystander effect. Why people at work defend bad behavior even when they know it's wrong. We've all seen things go down at the workplace and nobody speaks up. Well, research into why and answers in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Oh, it's such a clutch pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom, too. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
The GOAT!
Save up to 50% with minimum purchase at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This is your nightly dose of chaos, confession, and questionable life choices. The Last Show with David Cooper.
When workplace cruelty strikes, you'd hope someone would speak up, but thanks to the bystander effect, our old friend, that psychological glitch where everyone waits for someone else to act, bad behavior doesn't just survive at the office, it may well thrive. So why do good people stay silent when things get ugly? I'm here with someone who's done research in this. She's a professor of leadership at the University of Guelph in Canada. Her name is Dr. Laurie Barclay. Laurie, welcome in.
Oh, thanks so much. We're so excited to talk about this research today.
I know. I think I first got introduced to this as a young man, teenager, maybe even 12. I forget how old I was, when the finale of Seinfeld aired and the four lovable, degenerate, deplorable main characters just watched a guy get robbed on the street and joked about it. And everyone was talking about the bystander effect then.
Yeah.
What is it exactly? Like, for the purposes of studying it, how would you define it?
Yeah, so with bystander effects, oftentimes there's a diffusion of responsibility, and that's really what you saw in the Seinfeld finale as well. So nobody stepped up in those cases. And so everyone thinks somebody else might step up, and so nobody steps up. And with our research, really what we were doing is taking it to the next level to see, okay, well, are people actually justifying why they don't step up as well? And how does that process unfold? So we're kind of adding on to what we typically know.
So what are some of the justifications that could be a possibility for why, if something bad happens at work, no one's the first one to stand up and say, hey, this is against my values, I'm going to try to stop it?
Yeah, well, there can be a variety of reasons. So sometimes we just don't feel safe to speak up. But in our research, what we really found is if the environment is just typically tolerating mistreatment, then what that does is it makes us feel that, oh, mistreatment is just something that happens around here. And so when that happens, just as normal human defense, psychological defense mechanisms, what we start to think is, well, I really like to know what is happening in my environment. I like it to be consistent. I like it to make sense. And so if it's always happening this way, well, that's just the way things work around here. And so people start to justify, well, maybe that mistreatment was actually deserved, and maybe that person actually lacks legitimacy, and maybe they actually should have been mistreated. And so it's that kind of psychological attempt to reduce the discomfort that you might feel from observing this mistreatment,
as opposed to admitting to yourself, oh, I was just too scared to speak up, I didn't want to be judged, I didn't want to suffer any consequences. Those might be the real reasons, but we don't want to think we are that way.
Exactly. So we want to think about ourselves as moral good people. And so it's easier to say, oh, that mistreatment was deserved.
Let's talk about that phrase you said. That's just how things work around here. I feel like that could be used to justify validating any bad behavior.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of us listening as well would basically say, yep, I hear that at the office all the time. And that's where we really see that system justification kicking in and those psychological defense mechanisms, because people they want to protect what they know.
It seems dangerous, A, because it validates, but could it be contagious? Like, I accept bad behavior around me. My peer is debating speaking up. I say that to them. I say that's just how things work around here. And then my peer starts to believe it, and it spreads like an infectious disease. Is that something that can happen with thinking like this?
Absolutely. And we actually did some follow-up research where we actually found that it happens with managers as well. And when managers fail to step in when they witness this mistreatment, it can actually decrease the amount of trustworthiness that they have as well. So the employees basically think, I don't trust you anymore. And now it actually is going to impact my well-being even further.
So how can we flip the script so we don't end up in prison like our four main characters in Seinfeld? I keep on thinking about that. I remember when that aired, I was sitting with my mom. Not important. How can we flip the script so that we can be the ones to speak up, to stop normalizing toxic workplace behavior?
Yeah, so I guess if you're feeling like you're Elaine or Jerry, instead of looking around at George and Kramer and going, oh, no one else is speaking up, instead, what can I do in this situation? Can I just reach out to this person who has been mistreated and just help them feel validated and that they're not excluded, and affirming their value to the group? That can be incredibly important. And then for managers, it's okay, let's set the tone. Let's challenge the narrative that mistreatment is inevitable. And so when you see those incidents happen, it's like, nope. The way that we can start to make culture change and shift these climates is to actually deal with those everyday mistreatment events as they're actually going, be consistent, actually have consequences being enforced consistently as well, and just modeling respectful behaviors with yourself. That can really help.
It's not always on those individual contributors or employees that don't manage others. What can managers be doing more of? I've actually been both at a big, nebulous, huge corporation. I've been that IC individual contributor, and I've been a manager of 7 people. It's not always that individual's fault. It can be management's fault to normalize bad behavior. So if someone out there is a manager, what could they be doing more of?
So I think it's, again, being that role model and making sure that you're treating people respectfully. And what we find in the research is that there's a trickle-down effect. The more that we actually treat people respectfully, the more that our subordinates and those that report to us will treat people respectfully as well. So basically doing what you can as a manager just to live into your values and actually show up in the ways that you intend.
Do we think the popularity of shows that either make the office workplace humorous, like maybe the show The Office, or make it seem like this ugly, dysfunctional, horrible environment, maybe a show like Succession, has made us normalize workplace cruelty or even laugh at it?
So I also think, too, that, we also find in the research that oftentimes people who are very, narcissistic will actually move up to leadership positions. And then that starts to set a new tone, not as much empathy and things like that. And so the more that we can actually just, have that empathy, take those moments to actually learn about people and create space so that we can actually talk to them, build trust, that's also going to help.
Without glamorizing them or laughing at them too much, you studied incidents at the workplace that can cause the bystander effect. What are some of the more surprising or unsettling ones that you observed?
So I think there's just a lot of people who have jokes that just, are actually more cloaked racism, sexism, all of the isms that come out basically. And so I think those are also just really, really hard for those who actually experience it because it can really, impact their identities and how they feel at work. And I think on the flip side of that, I will share some of the ways that people get back at managers who, don't actually step in. And those can be sometimes really interesting. We did a study once where we found that people were doing things like collecting their dog poop and actually putting it on their manager's desk in the morning and things like that, or putting nails in the tires. And so, again, as managers, we really want to make sure that we're stepping in and not allowing these things to actually keep going.
My greatest fear is that I was a terrible manager and my reports hated me and felt unsupported by me, but they never slashed my tires or put on my desk. So maybe I was a good manager.
Well, what we find is that most people actually will negatively gossip behind their manager's back. And so that's one of the kind of social controls that we have that a lot of us will use.
Let's talk about that last point, gossip. If one behaves badly at the workplace or validates bad behavior, are they more likely to be gossiped about? How does gossip come into play with the bystander effect here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So oftentimes we think about gossip as kind of a retaliatory behavior, and that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes we just gossip because we're like, hey, other people should know about this so that they can protect themselves. And so it's a way to actually build community and also transmit information that can be helpful. So if you think of a manager who's basically behaving horribly, you're probably actually going to have more gossip happening within the team, and it will actually bring the team potentially closer together, but it's going to create an us against them effect with a manager.
Is an us against them effect always bad? Can't that create cohesion within the people on the team?
It can, but then if you're a manager and you need something done, are you going to be able to get the support from your team?
No, you're not.
Yeah.
So maybe not such a good thing.
And if you're in Seinfeld and there's that close cohesion, but we're doing things wrong, that can also be really damaging as well. So
certainly it can. Well, Laurie, thanks for the chat and thanks for sharing your research with me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Laurie Barclay is a professor of leadership of the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada. That is the show. I hope you have a nice weekend. I hope you stay safe. And don't forget to check out The Last Show as a podcast. Just go to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza. There you can find out more details. As ever, give us a call. Leave us a message if the lines aren't open, which they won't be in a few seconds. 1-888-505-6644. I am David Cooper. This is The Last Show. We will see you on Monday.
Well, you've heard me on the radio and you've listened to my podcast. Well, now you can watch me on YouTube for thought-provoking conversation, fearless interviews that you won't get anywhere else. The Ben Mulroney Show every single day. So go to YouTube, subscribe to The Ben Mulroney Show, and never miss an episode.